everyone. We've reached Friday, our final recipe that we're using from Bake Through the Bible, and it is called Jesus Dies, because that's what we've been learning about today as our story. You should have the recipe in your pack, so I'm going to prop up my recipe and get started. So I've measured out my ingredients already. I've got my flour, and what I'm going to do is put all the dry ingredients into the bowl and stir them together. So I've got my flour, I've got my sugar, so I'm going to pour that in. I've got a bit of mixed spice, and I'm going to use my half teaspoon, and I've got my big mixed spice jar, and I'm measuring it out so that it's level, and I'm going to add it in. Then, this sounds like a bit of a strange dry ingredient, but I've got my mixed peel, so it's going to go into my bowl too. I'm going to scrape out my bowl, make sure that there's none left sticking to the side. And lastly, my last dry ingredient is my yeast. Now I'm using a little sachet of yeast. I'm going to rip it open and pour it into my dry ingredients. Then I'm going to take a wooden spoon and stir all my ingredients round and round so that they're all well mixed in. You have to be careful that you don't mix too quickly and send all the flour spilling over onto your countertop like I've just done. So once we've got these all stirred together, I'm going to take my butter. Now I've got it in a little plastic bowl in front of me, and I'm going to microwave it because we want it to be melted. So what I'm going to do is do it at 10-second intervals. So I'm going to pop it in and do 10 seconds and see if it melts. While I'm doing that for 10 seconds, I'm going to just wash my hands again because I got some of the flour onto my hands. Oh, there's our beep. Let's check if that's melted yet. I think it might need another 10 seconds. Right, another 10 seconds. So, what we're making today are hot cross buns. Now, we often have hot cross buns at Easter because the cross reminds us about the cross that Jesus was on. So that's what we're going to try and make. Now this recipe can take a little while. Oh, there's my beep. I'm going to check if that's... There we go. My butter is now definitely melted. And I'm going to pour it into my dry ingredients and mix it round. And we've just used the microwave once, but I'm about to use it again. I'm going to make sure I get all of the butter out of my bowl. We don't want to leave any at the bottom of the bowl. We're going to use the microwave again, but we're not going to make something boil. I've got my milk in a jug here, and it's a plastic jug so that it can go in the microwave. You don't want any metal in the microwave, definitely not. So I'm going to pop it in, and I'm going to pop it on for 20 seconds. Now that's all I'm going to do it for because I don't want it to be boiling. I just want it to be slightly warm. I'll pop it in just now. Now you might be wondering, why do I want it to be slightly warm? The reason is, one of the ingredients that we put in was yeast. Now yeast helps the bread dough, which is kind of what we're making, a simple bread dough. It helps it rise. And the warmth of the milk will help the yeast to activate, and that will let it grow. So I'm going to get my milk out of the microwave. And it's just ever so slightly warm. Then the next thing I'm going to do is crack my egg into it. I've got my egg here and my knife, and I'm going to crack the egg into, there we go, my milk. And I'm going to mix the two of them together using a fork. Ooh. You have to be careful and not mix too vigorously like me. I seem to do that quite a lot. Then what I'm going to do next, once that's all mixed in, is I'm going to add it to my dry ingredients. But I'm going to do it a little bit at a time. I don't want to put it all in at once because then it would be really, really difficult to stir. So I'm going to put in a little bit and I'm going to mix it around. And what we're trying to do now is make sure that this will all come together. So we want it all to come together as a dough. And I'm going to add a little bit more. And now this is a matter of lots and lots of mixing. This will be really good for your muscles as you stir. And I can already smell the mixed spice that we added in just a little bit ago because it smells really, really nice. It makes me think of Easter. I think it's time for a bit more of my milk mixture. And I'm going to stir. Stir, stir, stir. It is all beginning to come together. I'll show you in a second once I've made sure that extra is all stirred in. So it no longer is like all individual flour bits. It's beginning to come together as. This is what you have to be careful about this. This is me being clumsy and spilling stuff because I always end up spilling stuff. But that's okay because it's me that has to clear it up at the end, because when we're working in the kitchen, whatever you do, whatever you use, you have to make sure that it gets cleared up, washed or put in the dishwasher to be washed, and that your surfaces are all clean afterwards. So it's almost like you're not even leaving any trace that you've been baking behind. Oh, I'm getting closer to it's all binding together into a dough. Oh, this is quite tough. If you're doing this, you definitely will. You might need to, if you've got another sibling, let them do a bit of stirring. You could share the stirring opportunities. Or if you're doing it with a mum or a dad or a guardian, then someone else could maybe have a go if your arms are getting tired. I'm going to put in a little bit more of my milk mixture. I've nearly added it all in now. And I'm nearly getting to the point of it all being together. I'm going to scrape some off the stuff that's stuck to my wooden spoon. I'm going to add in the last of my milk mixture and give it a good, really good stir. So our next bit is actually to turn this out and to knead it all together. Now for that we use our hands. So if you wear any jewellery, it's a good idea to take it off just now, because you don't want it getting stuck, the dough in the jewellery. Here's me knocking more things over. So I've got what I'm going to do is I'm going to flour my surface so that the dough doesn't get stuck to my worktop. So I've just got some flour and I'm just going to spread it out onto the surface. And at the same time, I'm flouring my hands because we don't want them to get stuck into the dough. So now, I think this is still quite sticky. Oh yeah, it is, but that's okay. Because we're going to bring it all together. I'll make sure I've got all of my mixture onto my surface, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to knead it now. When we talk about kneading something is a bit like mixing something, but we use a specific technique. And normally when you knead something, you use your knuckles. So these bits of your hands, and you can push inwards with, you can also use the palm, this bit, your heel of your hand, to make sure that it's all mixed in together. Now I'm going to make sure that my surface is still floured. We don't want it getting stuck to my worktop, so when I see that we're beginning to run out of flour, I can add a little bit more. Now, you want to knead your dough for a wee while. You can't just pop it on your surface and then make sure that it's all in a ball and that's it. We can do that when we're doing things like cookies and we want the mixture to go into the fridge. But when we're doing this sort of bread dough, because that's what it is, we want to make sure that it's all mixed in, because what we're doing is making sure that all the yeast that we put in is distributed right the way through our dough. Oh, I'm running out of flour, so I'm going to put some more on, and I think I'm maybe nearly ready for the next step. Because what I'm feeling now is my dough feels quite, now this is the word, elastic, stretchy, like it's all bound together, but it's soft and supple, so flexible when I'm kneading it. I think we might be ready with that. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to put a little bit of flour on my surface, and I'm going to pop my dough ball there for a second. Now then what we're going to do is we're going to leave this. I'm about to wash my hands though because my hands are covered in flour. Make sure my hands are definitely clean. We're going to leave the dough for an hour to prove. Now when I say prove, what will happen is it will get bigger. The yeast will work in the dough and it will rise. So what we want to do that is we don't want to leave it on our surface. We're going to put it into a bowl. Now I've got a big bowl here. First of all, before we just pop the dough right in, you need to oil the bowl so your dough doesn't get stuck to the bottom of the bowl. So I've got some oil and I've got some kitchen roll, and I'm going to pop some oil onto my kitchen roll, and then I'm going to spread it all over the inside of my bowl so that my dough won't get stuck. And I'm going to show you, so it's slightly shiny, that's good. And then I'm going to put my dough right into the centre of my bowl. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this. You could cover it with cling film, but I like covering it with a tea towel. So I've got a tea towel here. And I'm going to cover my bowl completely. And what I want to do is put it somewhere warm. So definitely don't put it in the fridge. You could put it somewhere like a window where the sunlight comes in. Some people have a proving drawer in their oven. You could put it in there and that would make sure that it's kept warm. The best thing to do is maybe leave it somewhere like a kitchen that is quite warm, not near an open door. And we're going to leave it for a whole hour and we'll come back and see if it's gotten any bigger. So I'm going to pop my dough over near a window that comes in. And now I'm going to clear this up and come back in an hour and see how my dough has risen. I'm with my dough and it has definitely risen. Can you see? Ooh, it's definitely a lot bigger than it was before. So what we're going to do now is we're going to portion the dough into buns and put it on our baking trays. Now we have to be careful when we're touching the dough, because it's risen. We don't want to knock all the wonderful air out of it. So I'm going to tear off a bit and make it, I'm being as gentle as I possibly can with it. So I've got about that side, and I'm going to move my tray over to this side so you can see. I'm rolling it gently, very gently, into a ball, and I'm going to place it on my baking tray. And I'm going to do the same thing again. Rolling my bun into a ball, being gentle with it. And what I'm going to do is put it onto my baking tray, and I'm making sure I'm leaving plenty space in between them, because we want them to rise again. And that, when they rise, we want them to have enough room to grow on the baking tray. So I'm aiming to have 6 buns on this tray and then 6 buns on my other tray. But what I will do, once I've got all my buns, I'm going to cover them again with my tea towel, and I'm going to leave them again for another 30 minutes. And that's just to let them rise again as buns. So I will come back when that is all done. I've left my hot cross buns to rise for half an hour. And we're going to do our next bit, which is the drawing of the cross onto our buns. First though, I've put the oven on for to 200 degrees. Sorry, my brain stopped working there. And what we're going to do next is we're going to get some plain flour, and I've got water, and I'm going to use this to measure out my 60 mils, because this is exactly 60 mils of water. And this is the mixture that's going to make the crosses for on top of the buns. So I'm going to mix together my flour and water until it makes a paste. Now, if, like mine, I've got my 75 grams of flour, if it's still too sticky, you might need to add a little bit more water. And if that's the case, add a little bit at a time. Don't put a whole nother thing in. Just add a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, because we want it to go really sticky, so that we're going to put it into a piping bag, or if you don't have a piping bag, a food bag with the wee corner cut off, so that we can pipe it onto our buns as crosses. I'm going to add just a little bit more water. So as you can see, it's becoming quite a smooth, pasty texture. I'm going to give it a really good mix so that I know all the flour is definitely all mixed in and there's none hiding at the bottom of the bowl. And then the next thing I'm going to do is prepare my piping bag. So I've got a piping bag, and this is how some people think I'm a bit strange for doing this, but when I fold my piping bag down and open it up, I do it over a glass, so that when I'm spooning in the mixture, it doesn't get all stuck to this bit, the outside bit, because that always really annoys me when you get a bit stuck to the outside and then you have to kind of squeeze it down and it goes all over your hands and it's just a bit annoying. I'm just going to give this paste, another good stir, and then I'm going to start spooning it into my piping bag. This is the fiddly tricky bit. It's not the easiest thing to do. I'm going to spoon, spoon, spoon. So hot cross buns, when we think about them, they're definitely an Easter thing that we normally have around about Easter. And it's because the cross that we're about to make with this mixture on top of the bun reminds us all about Jesus. It reminds us about how he was on the cross. And it was a bit of a reminder that it was all part of God's plan from the very beginning. When God made everything, he knew that at some point he would end up sending his son, his very special son, to make sure that we could have a relationship with him. Right, so I've got my mixture into my piping bag now, and what I'm going to do is very carefully draw a cross. Now it's a wee bit tricky because the mixture is quite sticky and they don't need to be perfect. That's the whole thing about baking. Nothing needs to be perfect because it'll taste just as good. I'm going to try and get mine across. Whoop, and then down and across and down. Whoa, that one went a wee bit squint, but that's okay. I'm going to push down my mixture so that I'm getting all the mixture out onto my bun. And as I'm drawing my crosses, it kind of makes me think about when Jesus was on the cross and he had been there for a long time. He was on the cross for a long time. Oh, this cross doesn't want to come apart. I'm going to have to touch it and then I'll have to wash my hands after I've finished. And when he was on the cross, and when he died, the sky went dark. And it's something that we sometimes forget about, that the sky, the whole earth, the whole creation, all these things that we've been learning about the birds and the light and the stars in the sky, they all reacted to the fact that he had died. The light went out. It went dark during the day. And this is kind of a reminder of what that was about the whole of creation. And when he was on the cross, when he died, the light went out. But we know the story. We know the light didn't stay out. So I've got my hot cross buns with the crosses on them, and now they're going to go into the oven. They're going to go into the oven for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to check them to make sure that they're golden, and if they are, I'm going to bring them out. So I will pop these into the oven right now. And I'll come back when they're ready to come out. My hot cross buns out of the oven, and oh, they are definitely ready. I'll take them out and then I'll show you them. Oh, they're quite brown. Oh. Here are my hot cross buns. I'm going to leave them to cool a bit and then I'm going to do the final glaze over them. But so far they look good. Remember, when you're taking things out of the oven, you might need an adult to help you because things are very hot. The final stage of our hot cross buns, and what we need for the first bit is we need our boiling water. So you might need some help from an adult because it will be very hot, and we're going to measure out 30 mils of our boiling water. And I'm going to put it in a cup so you can see what I'm doing. You have to be very careful because that will be very hot. And I've got a spoon and I've measured out my 40 grams of sugar. And I'm going to pour some in and stir it all round so that it dissolves. We want all the sugar to disappear. And I'm going to add the rest in. So this is going to become the glaze for our hot cross buns. So this recipe has been a little bit more involved than some of the other ones. We've had to wait for the dough to rise, and we've had to pipe our crosses on that remind us all about Jesus being on the cross, and then the sky going dark. And we've learned all about creation this week and about how God made the light and the dark and the waters and the land and the plants and the stars and the birds and fish and animals, and he made us. And ever since that point that he made us, he knew that at some point he was going to send his son Jesus so that we could be friends with him. And these kind of are the culmination in that. These remind us about every single part of it. So I have melted my sugar so you can see that there's no sugar left in it, and I'm going to take my brush, and I'm just using a pastry brush, but you can use other things if you don't have a pastry brush, and I'm going to spread it all over the top of my hot cross buns so that they get a nice shine on them. And maybe if you've had a go at making the hot cross buns, you could maybe share them with your family, or maybe with someone else, with a friend on your street. Or that would be a really nice thing. If you have someone on your street that you know maybe doesn't have some visitors, you could take them, you could wrap up a hot cross bun in a bag and put it on their doorstep for them. Maybe leave them a wee note. And if you're eating these, sharing them with your friends or your family, you could maybe tell them a bit about what the cross means on top of the bun. How it means about Jesus coming, and how that reminds us that God created everything, and that's where we started off this week. And we've come to the fact that God created everything, and he's always wanted us to be friends with him, and that's why we had Jesus. So I'm nearly finished glazing all of my hot cross buns, and they definitely look shiny now. And I've had a lot of fun baking with you all this week. I hope you've had some fun trying out maybe something new. And the thing I really like about baking is sometimes it all goes absolutely perfectly and things turn out exactly how you might think they should. And sometimes things go a little bit different. I don't say wrong, because there's nothing ever wrong about baking. They just don't turn out the way that you would expect. And that kind of is a little bit like an example of what being a Christian is like. Sometimes we think things should go one way, and it doesn't, and we get a bit sad. But Jesus always reminds us that he knows the way, he knows the plan, and all we have to do is be friends with him. And he will make sure that things work out the way that they're meant to. So, I hope you've enjoyed making our hot cross buns, and now you've definitely earned the right to eat them.